Hello, movie lovers. Welcome home. My name is Amy Henserling, and you are listening to Watch This List. I'm very excited today to have Kaylyn back on the pod, who was with me about a year ago, Kaylyn. I don't know if you know that it was an entire year that we talked about Donkey Skin and Blue Valentine.
Wow.
And today we're talking about a very different kind of movie, a horror movie called May. And Kaylyn was just telling me that this was her third rewatch. So I think you're as much of a fan of this as I am.
Yes, definitely. And it's only gotten better with each watch. So I'm really excited to share my thoughts this time.
When did you first see it? Did you see it when it came out?
No. I think I first watched it definitely in the last 5 years, but when exactly I don't remember. But it was a relatively recent watch. And then I think I rewatched it last year. So it's probably going to end up being an annual one. It's definitely great for the horror season, for sure.
What made you pick it? I mean, are you like a horror person, or was this something random for you?
Yeah, I think when I first watched it, it was really just because I was kind of in that mode of watching a bunch of horror. And so I was like, cool, let's check this one out. And it had been recommended to me before. So it was higher up on my list and I really enjoyed it. And then I rewatched it last year, I believe for Halloween, in the month of October. So yeah, good to have an excuse to revisit it again so soon.
Well, and I love talking to you about women things.
Yes.
I like discussing. It's not just because you're female, but it's also because I feel like you have a passion for that, and you have a sensitivity to it. The way that it's represented, like women are represented in film, but also I think feelings and issues. You know, it's not just because I mean we had met before on Poor Things, and then in Donkey Skin we discussed that too, and then this one is definitely I feel just completely female centric, even though it's written and directed by Lucky McKee, who is not a woman.
Yes. Yeah. And that's something that I really like because we had talked about this in our last conversation too, about how it's obviously very possible and very exciting to see men direct films like this that are women centric and that focus on these kinds of emotional, internal, struggles and things. And so it's very refreshing and in a way fulfilling to see that. So really, really glad to have this as an example to point to.
Yes. And I think particularly horror too. Horror tends that, I mean, I'm not an expert. A lot of people are in Letterboxd.
Yeah, neither am I.
Horror. So we're just preface this. I'm just a fan, okay? A novice fan. But a lot of horror movies I feel like do represent the female experience a lot better than otherwise. I mean, there are a lot of horror movies that I resonate very strongly with, like Possession and Hellraiser and Fire Walk with Me, that I feel or The Descent, they portray the intensity of the experience in a way that just can't be done in a regular straight drama.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something that I really wanted to get into about this film as well, is the way that horror really helps to bring those internal emotional conflicts to the surface and gives them the very visceral kind of context or feedback, I guess, that you would want. It's the catharsis of it, right?
Yeah.
To have your feelings be so out and visceral for everybody to see it and try to relate to. So yeah, it definitely brings it to another level. And I think horror is very unique and very needed in that way. It's a very different way of approaching talking about these things and giving it life and context that I really appreciate.
And they typically have a very strong performance centrally. Angela Bettis for this, just I feel like she was perfect, and there's so much commitment in her performance, and just I feel like a complete lack of self-consciousness. You really feel that she is May.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, obviously it's all writing on that performance too. She's really kind of carrying the whole film and she does it so well. It's such, there's so much truth, I feel, to it. I rewatched this last night for this conversation, and there's, scenes where she's kind of breaking down and crying, and it really hits. And it's just I feel in a way, it comes from that understanding that I talked about before too. These are issues and these are experiences and feelings that a lot of us have. And so her ability to capture that probably from an internal experience as well and bring it to the surface is just done so well. Like, she was perfectly cast for this, and she really delivers.
She really nailed it. Yeah. And it
Mm-hmm.
reminded me a lot of there's a movie called Kissed that's a bit like it's I don't know if controversial is the right word, but it's a strange subject, let's say that. And Molly Parker is the lead in it, and it's the same sort of feeling I get with both of these, that it seems like they understand the character so well. They're interested in like giving her
Mm-hmm.
justice and a voice and a
Mm-hmm.
place, and this one reminded me of that so much. And she's young, too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and May is such a kind of complicated character because she's got a lot of problems that are faced very directly. Like, there's no doubt that there's nobody who would walk away from this movie being like, May was very balanced. She was a very balanced human
Her
being.
mental health is to be admired.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But like, even within that, like, you still have so much empathy and understanding, and yeah, it's just so wonderful. And her ability to capture all of that is so good.
Okay, so give us like
Mhm.
like a synopsis. So for those, I mean, a lot of people haven't seen this movie, so I want to
Yeah.
sell it because I want everyone to see it. But tell us what it's about. It's from 2002, directed by Lucky McKee, and it's his debut. That's all I'm going to say, and then I'm going to leave you to it.
Yeah. Let me think. So what comes to mind first is just that it's a dark comedy. It's so funny, but it is a horror film as well, as you mentioned. And it follows the story of this young woman, May, who has never experienced a romantic connection before, as she develops a very intense crush that leads her to kind of fracture internally, mentally and emotionally, that leads her to some gory endings.
Slasher territory.
Yes.
Okay, well, Kaylyn,
Yeah.
okay, if we start at the beginning of the movie, right? It's all about her
Yeah.
lazy eye and that her
Yes.
sight is impaired. Okay.
Yes.
So it's already setting us up like with a visual metaphor of her emotional state, I would say, that she is an
Mhm.
outsider. But this sort of theme of like not being able to see clearly, I mean,
Mm.
that is all throughout the film. It seems like that she starts off that way, and then she never really sees until the very end, or I suppose is seen is a better
Mm.
way to put that.
Yeah, she doesn't really feel like accepted and understood, like, to be seen.
Right.
The sense of belonging, because and you see that through the film too, is like, it's really heartbreaking the way that she over and over again tries to kind of meet people and give them what they need. She's like, oh, you like this, let me do this. You want this, let me do this. And it just never kind of pans out to where she actually feels seen and belonging and cared for and loved and nurtured. And so it's really like a sad story. Like, the emotional core of it is really heartbreaking. And as you said, it comes from her being an outsider. And like, that's so much of like the resonance in the film too, that I think a lot of people can relate to. And like, it's just such a powerful thread to have there. But yeah, the feeling of not being seen, not being understood, and the way that loneliness can turn into, aggression towards yourself and self-hatred. What's wrong with me? Why am I not enough? And then towards others, what's wrong with them that they can't see my value? And so the movie really does a good job of kind of grappling with both sides.
And I think that you're making a good point too of its relatability. Like,
Mm.
I know that she's crazy, and that I mean, obviously in the realm of horror, she's like a psychopath. By the end, we know that she has like descended into madness. But I
Mm-hmm.
still maintain that her alienation and her loneliness and her feelings are valid, and they're universal. It's not as though we would, we can't relate to her because of what she ends up doing. I feel like the
Mm-hmm.
entire way, the genius of the movie is that we sympathize for her, and we even, I feel like, sympathize for her victims as well, because they seem to be
Mm-hmm.
very well meaning too. There's not really a villain in the movie.
Yeah, and we see over the course of the film too, like how hard she tries. Like there's even a point where she like goes and volunteers at a school like with blind children. Like she just wants like any place where she can have a sense of belonging, being understood. And that it leads to its own comedically dark end in its own right. But just like you said, you sympathize with her and you empathize with her because it's not just her being angry at the world, it's her really trying. Like she goes out of her way, she really is doing everything that she can. But then at the same time, as you mentioned, the people around her aren't like ultimately malicious either. And one thing that I really like about this film too is that while it is a very woman centric horror film, it doesn't villainize men. Like the guy that she has a crush on, he's not always a good guy. Like sometimes he's mean and sometimes he's kind of cold, but like ultimately he gives her the time, he acknowledges her, like he tries, you know, he apologizes to her when he does something wrong, like he tries to understand her. He's like, you know, when they are being intimate, he's trying to be patient and gentle with her. So there's like he's trying to do everything right, but as we said, May is just kind of a psycho. And so it's just, you know, and it's difficult because it's like she's trying so hard and he's doing what he knows to do that's, you know, good, but it doesn't work. And so it's just really sad and unfortunate. And that goes for all the characters too. I mean, they're not all perfect, but you can see that they're not like out to get her. Like they don't want anything bad for her either. It's just a bad situation, I guess
And
is what you can
I
say.
wonder too, what do you think about the idea of like that these characters also don't know themselves? Because one of
Mm.
the things I like about Adam, played by Jeremy Sisko from Clueless, I always
Mhm.
recognize him from Clueless, but so I was happy when I saw the actor. But one thing about
Mhm.
Adam that I feel like is emphasized that provides nuance to his character is that he's like, I like weird, you know, disgust me, like tell me things that are, and then when she does, he's like, no, 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 not that weird. So
Yeah.
I think there's a split there for him. Like he does not
Mhm.
actually know himself either. I don't think he really knows what he wants. Part of him is very curious about May in a very sort of sweet way, like a very
Mhm.
gentle way. And I feel like he's trying to give her a chance and open himself up, but then she goes too far, you know,
Mhm.
initially, and then it's like, even though he says he loves horror movies and he says that you know he made his own movie about a cannibal couple, he's still, it's like, I don't know, I feel like there's very interesting disconnect for him as a character,
Mhm.
and it's not just about May, it's also about his own self-perception.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you really hit it on the head there too. Like he has this kind of persona or this idea of himself that he puts out that he wants to be, but internally he isn't quite there yet. And it's interesting because then on the opposite side, May is like only herself and she is kind of trying to learn how to build a persona for herself that will help her fit in and be accepted. And so it's kind of the interesting tension of like her accepting everything he says at face value, thinking that he is going through the world the same way that she is, and him thinking that she is kind of playing into the bit the way that he is. And so it's kind of interesting, the misunderstanding. And I think it ties in so much to just like the way that the film is so much about these like early romantic encounters as well. Like I was watching it, I was thinking a lot about like my early romantic experiences and the way that like I would go into it very like open and innocently and just believing that same thing, that people are kind of like being real and being themselves up front. And then over time, the more experiences you have, you understand that people have different facades for various reasons, you know, guarding themselves in various ways, and you just don't understand that. So I feel like as much as it's, you know, the story that it's giving us, it's also just kind of this journey like through her acclimating to like the real world, so to say, and the fact that like people aren't always what they seem.
Right. I think that's so well said, because I think it's interesting the contrast between the way the characters relate to one another, that like you said, she's taking everything very, very seriously. Like if he has a video where somebody bites somebody's finger off, she thinks that he literally wants her to do that. And she's like down for it. And then he, I guess, thinks like what you're saying, where she's like on in the bit, but not actually serious. And then he's
Mm-hmm.
like, whoa, 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 you know, I don't know. But I like that they don't make him just like, I don't know, a jerk guy who
Mm-hmm.
he seems like he has no interest in like taking advantage of her or lying to her. I mean, and it's very refreshing. And that tends to happen
Mm-hmm.
in horror movies too, where I feel like the male characters are a lot more well balanced for some reason.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I hadn't actually thought about that as much, but I think you make a good point there about that balance. Yeah, and I mean, it's interesting too because as much as the focus is on her relationship with Adam, there's also her relationship with, oh, I forget the name of
Polly,
the character,
Polly.
Polly. Oh my god,
Oh my
Anna
god.
Faris in this is I am a huge Anna Faris fan to begin with, and she is incredible in this. And then that brings in a whole other realm of like the intimacy and everything too. And I think it's so great because it's like it's kind of funny, and I guess where I was going tangentially with this is it's kind of funny how like, you know, men are the Adam in this role is kind of like given opportunities to be intimate with her and doesn't try to take advantage of her, and it's very kind of like emotionally forward, and it's much more of like a romantic relationship that he seems to be looking for. And
Right.
then on the opposite side, contrasting, is this woman character who is extremely sexual, who's very forward, who's very like erotic and really coming on to May like in almost every scene. And May again she just does not pick up on it because she doesn't have the experience to understand. Like she just she doesn't get the bit when, you know, when she's like, oh, you should come over and eat melons. Like she doesn't get it. And so it's just like, it's so funny. And I think that like, that contrast is so smart too, because it's kind of calling out again that same thing of like relationships and facades and what people are really after. And also I really like the way that it balances what would be perhaps assumed of men and assumed of women, and it flips that in a way that's actually really funny and interesting and serves the plot.
And is so, it's so like fun to watch.
Yeah.
Just it's because you're right. The stereotype of like that women would be more romantic or less aggressive is Adam. So he's
Mm-hmm.
the female or whatever, you know. And then
Yeah.
Anna Faris is like the man, and she is so maybe. I mean, she's kind of like May though. I don't feel like May is weirder than she is. I
I
feel
don't think
like
so.
she just kind of gets by with being that way because she's so assertive, but she's also like she doesn't seem to mind that she doesn't know much. Like she's constantly
Mm.
saying things that are like revealing how she doesn't know like how to pronounce words or what words mean, or she'll be like, "Oh yeah, well I don't understand like I only understand 20% of what the doctor says," but she says it with such confidence. Uh
Mm-hmm.
so I love her character because she brings basically the opposite of May, only in the sense of just no self-consciousness. She seems to know exactly what she wants, and she just goes and does it, and then she's like, oh honey, you know, it's fine. Like not a
Yeah.
big deal. I can kick her out if you want.
Yeah, or you can come in and join us. Yeah, it's so funny. Like,
Oh,
yeah, it's really interesting to have those two dynamics, you know, influencing and kind of bouncing off of May, who is kind of this so neutral, so inexperienced, kind of like almost like a blank slate. Like, she just wants to be accepted, she just wants to be loved, and she just doesn't know how. And then you go out into the world, and, you know, people have different motivations. So, yeah, I really like the way that the whole story works, and it's part of what makes it such like an interesting and engaging film to watch over and over again. Like it's so funny and gory and dark on the surface, but the more time you spend with it, you're like, oh my god, there's all these layers to it that add so much richness. It's really a beautiful film.
and then atmospherically, I think too, like
Yeah.
the soundtrack is very unique and very like, you
Oh
know,
yeah.
2000s, and kind of, I don't know, how would you describe it? It's like not I guess rock. I don't know. It has like an edge to it. I feel like all the soundtrack choices.
Yeah, it's great. It has definitely like an indie edge to it too.
Mm-hmm.
Like the first real drop needle drop that I can remember is like a Breeders track, and they kind of bring that one back a few times. One of my favorite songs. Love that record. So yeah, it definitely kind of fits into like that zone too, where it's like a little bit indie, a little bit unexpected maybe. I like it a lot. It adds a nice edge to it, and yeah, the music throughout is really, really good. One of my favorite parts of the film as well.
I agree. And I just saw the movie Ginger Snaps. Have you seen Ginger Snaps?
I love Ginger Snaps. Oh my God, a favorite.
Was so good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had to bring that up because that to me is very in line with this. Like if somebody, and I want to call it like Ginger Snaps instead of Ginger Snaps because she snaps. I love that it's called Ginger Snaps, you know, like the,
It's so clever.
Anyway, it's so clever. But I was going to say the music in that too is a whole vibe. And then that's got sort of a, you know, like a punk rock, I don't know, like even Ginger and her sister, Bridget. Yeah. They're both just very intense and brooding, and they would totally be friends with May, I feel.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Can you imagine that trio unleashed on the world? Oh my God.
Because they're like the confident version of her. Like the way that they speak is so, it's quotable in this way where it's like, are we best friends now because you've looked into my freezer? There's so many lines in Ginger Snaps that are like, what? You know, it feels so that's all to say those two are two examples where I feel like world building, like they take place in the real world, but they feel like an alternate universe, sort of.
Yeah, like slightly removed. I totally see what you mean.
Yeah.
And there is some of that like mysticism or imagination in May too. Like without going into spoilers, people who have seen it, like the ending of the film is very much that where it's like, it's not necessarily like magical realism. And I don't think that you're supposed to really believe what you're seeing, but it's like, there's still kind of those elements of it being just a little bit outside of reality, like just bending it a little bit. And then some of the like different things that happen too are kind of a little bit outside of reality too. Like when she brings her best friend doll into the blind, daycare area or whatever, like that whole scene is so unrealistic and insane.
Yes. And that's when it kind of goes off the rails. And then the cat, and then, I mean, things start going like, and you don't know if she's like actually just deteriorating mentally or if these things are actually occurring.
Yeah, and so you kind of have to suspend reality a little bit, even though it is also like such a grounded film. And then also just kind of mentioning like the way that Ginger Snaps and May are similar in form. I feel like in terms of like the violence too, where like they are violent movies. There's a lot of blood. I mean, even the opening of Ginger Snaps is like so dark, and it's immediately like very kind of like brutal, but at the same time it's also like restrained a little bit. Like for example in May, like there is the blood and there is like this very like visceral feeling of like gore and horror as these things are happening, but it's either lightened by humor, like the children with the glass, or it's like darkly funny, I should say. It's not actually that funny, or it's almost like it's pulled back to where like you don't really see her doing a lot of violence, and when you do, it's kind of handled in a different way from a lot of other horror movies, where it's like, I feel like most typical horror, you kind of have the climactic music and it's building to this moment and it's all this stuff, and with May it almost feels like that's kind of removed, like it almost becomes quieter, like it's a very like it's not passive, but it's handled much differently than other horror. Like it's not trying to make like the moment be about the violence. It's about everything around it. And so it's like, as much as that's present, it's not necessarily the focus of the movie the way that maybe like Terrifier, the focus is about the gore. Like the gore is almost more of like an auxiliary element to tell the story. And that, I think, is what makes it so successful too. And I think it's the same with the Ginger Snaps, where it's not about the horror necessarily. It's about how the horror is a framework for the story. And like, that's what makes it work so well.
Well, and I think also it is a representation of what's going on internally. Like Ginger Snaps, it's about the sister relationship. I mean, there's other things that go on, but it's largely, I mean, besides, like, getting your period and becoming and having body changes and being an annoying high schooler. I think it's also just like this, the relationship between the two sisters, and then in May, the relationship from May to herself once the doll is gone, which I think is key, because the kids, you know, the blind kids are like, let her out, May. And you feel like they're saying it to her, like, let yourself out. Like, you've been caged for so long. You've been like behind the glass. And you're right. The end of Ginger Snaps is like bloody, with Sam trapped in there, and like there's a lot. But at the same time, it is a very, very personal. It feels very personal of a journey. And I think May, the very end. I mean, like, I read Ebert's review, who loved this movie, by the way. He gave it 4 out of 4.
Nice.
And he was like, I could see people saying that like the very last gesture is comical. I do not. I
don't think so.
I don't think so. And I'm like sobbing, crying. I cried again today rewatching it, and I had already like, I knew it was coming, but it's so, oh my gosh, I feel like it's so moving. And it isn't just, I think you're getting at that. It's just, none of this stuff is like for jump scares. None of it is it's not gratuitous at all. It's intentional.
Yeah, it's not like designed to just horrify you and then you move on. And I mean, like, you can even tie that back to Adam, where it's like, oh, disgust me, not that much. It's like, it's not trying to be that. It's, even though there are those elements, like, oh my gosh, the dog with the stitches, like, that's horrifying. But then still, like, even as she's telling the story, darkly funny. But yeah, so I really like that element of it, and the fact that it really focuses on telling the story first and then adding those elements after, rather than being like, I have this idea for a gnarly kill. How am I going to make this happen? And I think that's part of what makes it so successful, like huge part of what makes it so successful. It's great. And then speaking of the doll too, one thing I noticed this time that I hadn't noticed before is that, her Halloween costume at the end is like the doll's outfit.
Exactly. Yes. When I saw her in the elevator, I was like, she's like become the doll herself.
I didn't notice that before. I don't know why, but like, the stitching and like the color and everything. It's
And then she's got the little, like the cooler behind her, which to me kind of represented that glass case. I felt like she was, once the doll, and I have to say this too, like while we're talking about this, that I really like that the doll has nothing to do with anything. Like normally a doll in a horror movie would like come to life or do something. And this literally, I mean, what do you think its function is in this? Like, how would you, because I feel like it's just all in her mind, that nothing is actually going on.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's exactly it. It's genuinely like just the manifestations of her anxieties and her self-doubt and her insecurities. It's like everything her mother told her, hide yourself, like you won't ever be accepted as you are, this kind of thing. And it's like your only friend will be this doll. Like it's an embodiment of all of that. And so it's like, the glass cracking over the course of the film too is like such a wonderful metaphor for all of that. And it's like, it even kind of works as a great way for us to understand more of her internal dialogue too, where it's like she talks to the doll and we understand that she's talking to herself. Like even the scene, when Adam is over at her house and then leaves and she's like, I told you to face the wall. And you're like, oh my God. So it's like, the doll is like her anger and it's like all of her negative feelings and all of her, all of the stuff that's been put on her that's kept her caged is this thing. And so like the ability to like smash out of that and then own it is like, it's crazy. It's powerful. I got goosebumps just now.
I know. I was about to say, I get it because there's a other movie that came out. I don't know if I would call this horror, maybe horror comedy, but it's called Your Monster that came out last year. And it's by a female writer director. And it's about a girl, who has a monster in her closet who comes out and helps her to express her rage. And I read interviews with the director, and she was like, she doesn't feel like women are allowed to do that. And so she had it representing, it's not even like a love interest in that sense. It's just that she's like, it's the part of ourselves that we're rejecting, that just like desperately want to come out. And like, in this situation for May, it comes out violently because it's been suppressed for so long. But I think that our like care for her is in the identification of that for ourselves, of
Mhm.
just like, what do you do with all that energy? Where does it go if it's yeah, in a box, like in a glass case? Where does it go?
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, I said before, but it is like so heartbreaking to watch her just try so hard to like really connect with people and not be able to. And it's like, of course, like, I mean, I've had situations like that too, where like I've tried to be friends with people or tried to connect with people and felt rejected. And it's like, it's sad and then it makes me angry sometimes. And so it's like, it is a very relatable feeling. And then even like at the beginning of the story too, I mean, we all have like our anxieties and stuff too, but I mean, like, I've had issues like with my body and my appearance and everything that I've tried to hide through my life and felt very insecure about and been like, I would be accepted by everybody if not for this one thing. And so it's very powerful in that too. And I think that a lot of different people from all different walks of life can understand that. But like, yeah, especially in terms of being a woman and having to like swallow that basically and live with it and not be able to like talk about it the same way, because it's like, even in her life, May doesn't really like, she doesn't have friends, like she doesn't have anybody. And it's like her mom and dad are shown at the beginning, but they're not there in her life now, so she's really just by herself and has no outlet for her emotion, rage or otherwise. But yeah, good point about not being able to talk about the things that make you angry. I mean,
Yeah.
I've run
And it
into that
like
a lot
causes
too.
violence. Like
Yeah.
Kristen Stewart was just talking about this at Cannes with Chronology of Water, her movie that's coming out. She was saying like
Oh.
there's all this violence against women all the time, and that she even said
Mm,
like she was like, being a woman is like, you just feel that like, I'm not able to just be myself. I have to
mm,
tone myself down. I mean, it's almost like how May picks up smoking. It's
yeah.
this arbitrary like adaptation where you don't even know if you want to do the activity or you want to, it's sort of
Hmm.
performative belonging, I feel like. And that's something that's interesting to me in the way the movie is, because she actually doesn't smoke like successfully, I would say, like smoothly, until she's killed somebody. And then she
Yeah.
does, and it's like, oh, now she can be like normal because she has expressed herself. Um so I don't know, there's that tie in too, that I feel like May is constantly trying to be normal
Mm,
without actually, I don't know, she doesn't want to be. She wants to be sitting under a tree reading about amputation. That's what she wants, you know?
yeah.
So, I don't know.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because this is something that I was thinking about a lot yesterday too, about how she is not normal until she like it's funny how like when she is normal and when she's assimilating is when she's like committing crimes, like when
And
she's
is the
like
most
bloodthirst.
crazy.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly, like when she's like finally kind of like snapped and has like a goal for herself, and is like, I need parts, like that's like as
Moment.
soon as she, and actually as I'm saying this, it's kind of interesting because it's like as soon as she understands that she can, it's almost like as soon as she understands that she can like, I don't want to say take from others, but like not always have to like, I don't know. I guess I'm trying to feel my way through it, but it's just like, there's something that wakes up in her where she's like, it's more externalized, right? And so she's finally able to kind of like take back from the world, and that's what makes her normal. And so it's like as soon as she assimilates is when she's the least normal, because she's not being herself, but it's also when she's kind of like trying to take back from what she feels was taken or held back from her. And so it's kind of interesting where it's just like giving into your worst, like her worst impulses is also what is helping her to apparently fit in it. And I don't know, I'm really just kind of thinking aloud here, but it's something that I was kind of like also trying to think through last night. Does that resonate with
No, it
you
does.
or?
Yes. And I think you're right that there's like, I mean, this is kind of a comment on emotional maturity in general. I feel like when we grow up, part of that
Mm-hmm.
growing up is not waiting for other people to be okay
Right.
with us.
Mm.
I mean,
True.
part of it is saying, you know, I can find a way to get what I want without
Mm-hmm.
having to rely completely, because she's so dependent on others for
Mm-hmm.
acceptance. So as soon as she sort of begins to accept herself, and
Mm-hmm.
she's like, I understand, you know, when she says that, like, I
Mm-hmm.
understand, Adam,
Mm-hmm.
um, to me, that's like she's claiming her right to have her own feelings, but also recognizing that he doesn't share them, and like it's
Yeah.
okay, instead
Mm-hmm.
of just constantly trying to be the type of person that he wants, because that didn't
Mm-hmm.
work. Like, it didn't win him over.
Right.
She couldn't really convince him.
Right. And it's kind of interesting too, because like when she's first close to Adam, she's like, oh, you're perfect. Everything about you is perfect. And he's kind of like, oh, well, nobody's perfect. And then later she's on the bench and she's watching all the people walk by and she's like, so many beautiful parts, but no beautiful holes. It's like she kind of starts to understand that too. Cause I can relate to that sometimes, somewhat too, like being younger and like even just looking at adults and stuff and being like, oh, they have their lives together, everybody's like so good, like, oh, you know, in order to be in love you have to like be perfect and like, you know, all these things, and it's like you don't and you can't, and it's like finding beautiful parts in people and latching onto that. I mean, she did it in absolutely the wrong way, but
I was
in,
gonna say,
in
but
theory.
also, I think that she feels, this might be a stretch, but I get the impression that she feels that she's like all these different parts, and she wants to be whole, right?
Mm,
Because at the end, what she's doing, I think it's less like Frankenstein, even though the guy has like the Frankenstein tattoo, and obviously there's parallels. I don't
mm-hmm,
think that she's trying to create like, well, I don't think she creates a monster. I think that she's
mm,
trying to take disparate things that she loves, like the girl's legs and
mm-hmm,
Adam's hands, that she thinks are like their most attractive features, and heal herself. Like,
mm-hmm,
she I think she's trying to make herself whole, and then maybe be seen by the pain, like
mm,
approved of by that pain. I don't know. It's so multi-layered to me, that whole
yeah,
thing, and then moving the letters around to make Amy, so
mm,
it's May, but it's also Amy. You know, I don't know. I feel like there's so
yeah.
much there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, I think even just that, like in the name of like trying to find a version of herself that will be accepted and that will be seen and that can see, you know, and he, like you said, heal a part of her. And so, yeah, it doesn't, and what's funny too is I didn't really get the sense, as much as it is like a romantic film in the terms that it is, it's not, I didn't get the sense that she was trying to make like a romantic partner at the end either. Like she
No.
just wanted companionship. She just wanted to be seen. She just wanted to feel like enough. And so I see that too. And then even just like, you know, the final piece was putting a part of herself into that too, like her own
Yes.
eye, and also the part of herself that kept her from being accepted. She put into this other embodiment
Yeah.
and found some sort of, you know, reconciliation with herself in that. So I think that's so spot on. Yeah.
It is so powerful. And I also, one of the things I was thinking this time when I saw it was, I don't know if this will make sense, but
Mm,
something that I've been thinking about is that, you know, like in therapy and when you're going through something, you're trying to understand your pain, right? Like, you're trying to
mm,
understand the source of your pain. You're trying to look at your pain. For this movie, she wanted to be seen by her pain
mm,
instead of her
mm,
see it. So I thought, oh, like that is such an interesting concept that I've never even
mm,
considered. Like, the idea that you could see your own pain, but you want your pain to like see you,
mm,
how it's harming you, how it's like disconnected you from others, how it's disconnected you from yourself. And then that like embrace from it, saying like, I see you. I don't know. I just think that's like a revolutionary idea. That's why I gave it 5 stars. I was like, this idea I've never seen portrayed. The idea of like being comforted because you feel like your own mess understands you, and that like even if no one else does, and then like she could be healed and like move forward, maybe, or not. I don't know about May, but I just love that idea.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna make me cry over here. Like the way you said that's so beautiful. That's so true, and it's. I mean, oof, to the heart, to the heart. I feel that so much, and yeah, I mean, like I feel a little like overwhelmed by my emotions right now. To be honest, it's a little hard to think of any other films off the top of my head that have done something similar. So it's hard to say
Yeah.
like, oh, there's no others. It might just be me in the moment, but I would say that even if there are others, it's very uncommon. It's very rare, and to have it articulated so well and so viscerally, and in such like a grounded and emotional way in this film is so good. I hadn't like it's funny too because I kind of felt that, but having you say it aloud like really drives it home for me, and I do truly feel that like she's looking for acceptance everywhere, but all she needed was like to have it in herself, but she needed to like move through the world and have these experiences and kind of gain insights of herself through others and understand others better in order to be able to have that internal like reconciliation, that healing, because before then she didn't have like the tools, she didn't have the, I guess, the emotional vocabulary, so to say. Not to say that she was necessarily like of sound mind at the end, but like she still kind of has this arc in a way of like understanding herself and accepting herself. And accepting herself as a mess and as a patchwork of pieces. And that's, that's what it is too. Like, especially, kind of tying back to this romantic thread, it's like, every person that you open up to and that you become close with, you become a little bit a part of them and they become a little bit a part of you. And so it's, as you move through the world, you like gain and lose parts of yourself. And so it's kind of interesting that at the end too, like what becomes the embodiment of her accepting herself is made up of others, but then it takes her putting herself into it to see herself. My gosh, Amy,
This is so good. And also, Kaylyn, it's like the literalization of what you're saying. Like as you were talking, I was about to say what you're saying, literally,
oh my
which
gosh.
is that like this, we do this already, just not, we just don't kill people, but we do take we take pieces of people with us, right?
Yes,
I
yeah.
mean, we have like, in past relationships, like I remember certain people's hands, or I remember certain people's eyes, or I remember certain people's smell, and you take those things with you.
Yeah.
And like maybe a good way to think about it that would be healthier, which is what the movie does, is externalizes those things. So like those things could be like part of us, but outside of us. And so maybe if we could also see it as that, like I am not all the relationships I've had, me, but like I can look at it and I can see it as like a conglomeration of parts, and then like be more objective about it and be more like, I don't know. I feel like that's like a psychological distinction that's helpful to just
Yeah.
say, I've had these relationships and I don't need to kill everyone to have pieces of them, but I also don't have to say that they're me. I can rename them, like she does, like rename it, but still be part of my name. I don't know. I
Yeah.
just think all of this is like a great way to process when you have emotional pain and you have relationships that didn't last, that died, or that you killed.
Right. And I think that ties in perfectly to like what I was saying before about like the violence and gore being more like auxiliary to the point where it's like the feeling of falling in love and then losing that is such a violent feeling, and
It
it's
is.
so like it breaks you and it can tear you apart, and it's like that is kind of what we're watching her go through. And so it's like an embodiment of the violence of loss, of the violence of longing, which isn't always thought of as like a violent thing, but then it's like you go through a heartbreak and you're like, this is pain, like it really is, and it feels like you're in a billion pieces and shattered glass. And so it's like it's very much an embodiment like of these things in a very literal way too, where it's like, yeah, taking pieces of people, losing pieces of people, it's all like very literal here, but like the violent feeling of it is the same.
I know.
Yeah.
And it's so cathartic to see it represented in such a way. I mean, I know there's an element to this where there's like a lack of reciprocity,
Mm.
but I think that maybe, I don't know, it's almost like she feels she takes it harder because she's like, touch my face, you know, and she literally just wants, I don't know, like, I mean, a bare minimum of affection, and she can't just have it. I mean, Polly sort of does give it, but then Polly's like a nympho, so she would
Yeah.
pretty much touch anybody.
Yeah.
But I think she really wants it to be meaningful, and um and so I don't know. I don't see this as like, I know that some people have written in May like that she is killing these people as a sort of way to have them. I don't think that she's trying to like have Adam because she kills him. I really think she is literally trying to accept herself, and she does not know how, because she screams like, all I want, like, see me. That's the last words of the film is see me. Like, she's so desperate for that more than like, I don't know, you know, just to sleep with somebody or be in a relationship.
Yeah, it's so much deeper than that. I think like, yeah, it's almost kind of missing the point because it's not about that, to me at least. And it makes me feel good to know that you agree. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it doesn't come off that way to me at all. Gosh, I don't know.
It's just an incredible ending, and I feel like it completely just hits it home. I also think that like the madness of it, like Ebert compared her to like Lady Macbeth, and I have to read his quote. Let's see what you think about this. Okay, he said, "In the best horror movies, the crimes are inescapable, and the monsters are driven toward them by the merciless urgency of their natures." I kind of like that term, merciless urgency, because it seems like so what I was going to ask you is, what do you think the parallel is of this to like people who get ghosted or people who try to date? Like, I feel like there is this merciless urgency in our culture kind of now of like, people do not know how to handle rejection and don't know how to handle pain. And it can come out quite violently, even if it isn't physical violence.
Yeah, absolutely. I hadn't really thought about that before, so I'm glad you brought it up. That's an interesting way to look at it. Yeah, I mean, current dating culture is so toxic in so many ways. It's really difficult, and it's so much about like you know, how you are on the outside too. And then it's like, if you fit what somebody, if you fit what somebody wants on the outside, but not on the inside, yeah, you're kind of gone, and you don't always get to understand why. And you don't always yeah, it's ghosting. It's terrible. In relation to May, I can see that too, but I more just see it as like, I don't know. I empathize with her quite a bit. I feel like it's as if she is like never dated. Well, because she has never dated before, and then being thrown into the scene where like everybody else is kind of like so many steps ahead in terms of maturity, as you mentioned, and she just isn't. And so it's like, I guess she is kind of like an embodiment of that inability to handle rejection in a real way, to move on. But then at the same time, you look at Adam, and like, as much as he was like trying to like gently reject her, he never actually like was forward about it. He was never like, we shouldn't see each other, this is over. He's just kind of like, I gotta go. And so in a way that like doesn't, it's an unkindness to her, and it's not fair. And obviously the way she reacts is not acceptable, but like, it's just, yeah, the inability to kind of move on. And then, yeah, even with Polly, where she's like making very, very strong advances, and then kind of like either, you know, just kind of gets bored or whatever and moves on to the next. And May doesn't understand why or what happened. And so then it kind of brings up this like air of competition too, of like, I don't know. It's yeah. I feel like I can't speak as much to the dating scene right now, because I'm just like, yeah, I don't know. Well, I don't do online dating stuff.
Well, I was gonna say, here's my connection, okay? Because I just saw this movie Friendship. I don't know if you saw Friendship.
Oh, I still need to see it. Yeah, it just came out.
Yeah. Okay. So one thought I had, this movie is like, Friendship is crazy. It's also like a very heightened reality. So it's almost like horror, where it feels surreal and it doesn't feel like real life, even though it's set in, I guess, real life. But in that movie, the problem is that like people are just not given second chances. So that's kind of where I'm getting at. This merciless urgency that I think Ebert is talking about is that we write people off, like as a culture. Like you said, you may look the way the person wants, but as soon as you misstep and you do something, you're gone. And that's what I'm saying, that also happened in friendship, where it's like he's weird one time and then it's like, oh my gosh, get out of here, we don't want to associate with you. But all of us have things that aren't great, and like to be written off like that, I think is what taps into that like almost animalistic reaction of like, why can't we give each other second chances? Even though Adam is trying to do that, I don't feel like he really does once he's turned off. Like once he's turned off, that's kind of it.
Yeah, he's pretty much over it. Like, I think it's more just that he accepts that like she's kind of gonna be around, and so he has to like be okay. Like she just keeps showing up, and she's like at the laundromat, and she just passing him on the street and stuff. So he kind of, I think, in a way is like, he's over it, definitely, and that's apparent. But then he's like, I got to figure out a way to make this like civil, make this okay, so I can keep living my life. But then May doesn't get that because he's never open with her about it. Not really. And again, like maybe he can assume that she's kind of understanding or in on the bit in some way or another, but she doesn't get it. She just takes what he's saying at face value. So when he's like, oh, maybe we'll see each other later, or we'll see each other around, or I'll call you, she thinks that's true. And so it's kind of interesting. Yeah,
and when she calls him, she thinks that he knows who she is. She has such delusions about, and it's not her fault. Like you're saying, she's kind of just like nicely led on. Okay, my last question here. Do you feel like this is a coming of age movie in the way that Ginger Snaps sort of is, like, or like Ghost World, or this reminded me a lot of Ghost World too. Like, do you think this is like adolescence sort of a metaphor, or do you feel like this is just like straight up she's just, I don't know, a psycho, and this is just us watching her unraveling?
No, I definitely think it's a sort of coming of age. And I feel like I kind of was trying to get at that a little bit before too, where it's just like she's very innocent in a lot of this. She goes into it with a lot of innocence and very open, and well, not very open, but she's trying. Like she wants to open up. She wants to kind of like be vulnerable. She wants to be accepted. And she is, she has an innocent view of the world that she has to go through all these different things to kind of understand isn't the way that things actually are. So I would say, yeah, like she's obviously much older than like the characters in Ginger Snaps and Ghost World. But at the same time, emotionally and mentally, she's really not. She's maybe even, in fact, kind of emotionally, mentally younger than them because she hasn't been exposed to the world in the same way. She's extremely sheltered. She's, she has a job, but she's like just very in her own world. And it's when she's forced out of that she has to grow. So I would say that it definitely is a coming of age of sorts. Age. I don't really know what the age would be, but like coming of self, I guess. I don't know. Spiritually coming of age. Yeah.
Well, and it's a fine line between, I always find this fascinating because I relate to coming of age movies even as the age I am, right? I mean, I could watch like a movie about high schoolers and I'm like, oh, I can see, because we're still always trying to figure it out. But like when she's got like Gatorade in the wine glass, she just, it's almost like there's a fine line between eccentric, like it's almost like if you do that on purpose, you're okay. But like to not know that that's like societally odd is what makes it, he kind of goes with it. But I mean, she does weird things like that. Like obviously she has a job and she's like good at it. And she's not like uneducated. We don't get that feeling. And then she works for the blind school easily. I mean, she's not totally, and she's on her own. But yeah, the Gatorade and the wine glass thing is like, it hits it to me where it's like, oh, she just doesn't know like what to do in life. And she's so wholesome.
Yeah. And it's like, as much as it's like wholesome and endearing, it is also kind of sad because it points to the fact that there's never been somebody in her life to be like, that's a little odd, or maybe we should do something else, or have you considered trying this instead? Like, there's nobody in her life to kind of like steer her in that direction. And so, yeah, then we get things like the Gatorade and the wine glass, which is beautiful.
I know. I thought it was Mountain Dew, but he's like, is this Gatorade? Also,
Same
I
color,
think that she possesses like a certain fearlessness that I felt like was very kindred to Bella Baxter in terms of like she invites that stranger from the bench into her home, and he's like, can I take my shirt off? And she's like, do what you want. And she has no fear. Like, this is a total stranger. Maybe it's because she's a killer, but she's not really afraid, even though she's awkward in the film. I don't feel like she ever has fear. And I really admire that about her character. Like, she does not seem to be like, this guy's going to take advantage of me. She goes into situations kind of blindly, but then you feel like she could get out of any situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, part of her willingness to do that, you kind of have to wonder, like, if she even knows what some of the repercussions would be for something like that, because she probably hasn't.
Like, she's naive.
Yeah, okay, I mean, she might not know, but even still, like, that bravery to be like, it doesn't matter, like, yeah, I could defend myself, whatever, I think is interesting. And that, like, kind of brazen way of going through the world, especially in the second half, even though she's kind of like snapped, like, that's still like that kind of like unrelenting confidence of just like, I'm untouchable, what I want to do is what I want to do, and nobody's going to stop me from doing it, and this is how I'm going to be in the world, this is my space, this is who I am.
And it's so attractive. I wish that like I could do, I don't know, I feel so much like I have like more female friends than I've ever had in my life right now, and there's so much like caution and, you know, just feeling like they aren't as strong as they are, or that they can't be as intense as they are. And maybe that's why I just love when women are represented like this in horror, because that to me is what everybody wants, not the killing part, but just it is attractive for a person to have that, I don't know, aura about them, and that like certainty, and that like, no, you're not gonna do this, and I am gonna get what I want. And but like, we're so scared to exhibit that. I feel like I don't know, maybe we're rightfully scared, like you're saying, because we're not naive about what could happen. But at the same time, I don't know, I wish I could encourage people to like access your inner May in that way, that fearless way.
Yeah, I think a really good example of that in the film is, and it's leading to a bad thing, but in the beginning of the scene, it's positive in a sense, where she shows up at Adam's house, and Adam's there with his girlfriend. And there's kind of like this encounter where like May is almost like, she's like impenetrable. Like, nothing they're saying or doing is affecting her in any way, really. Like, she's like, okay. And like, I actually kind of appreciate this in the way too, where like, there's so many stories with women where like the women are pitted against each other. And I actually really appreciated that moment where it was like a little bit of like a reprieve, or like a contrast to that, where like like Adam's girlfriend, she's like, I like your earrings. And she's like, yeah, I like your dress. And it's like, even in this moment
it's
of
a connection.
like, right. And it's like, even in this moment of like animosity of like, what are you doing here? Why are you trying to get with my boyfriend? And she's like, what are you doing here? They're both just like, all right, I see you. It's like, it's still like, you can have these like conflicts without it being like so about that, or like, it doesn't have to always have that. And so I appreciated that, like, even within their conflict, they're like, all right, I still see you. But, and like, obviously it leads to something else, and, you know, things get bloody, but still it's like the impenetrability, the confidence to enter these situations without any concern, to know yourself, to know your objectives, to seek those objectives regardless. But then also to like still acknowledge people as people. I mean, she was not quite doing that in a good way, but still, in theory.
Yeah. I love that moment too. I love that moment because you can see on the girl's face, the chick from Brick, from which Ryan Johnson was one of the editors on this, and then Brick was a couple of years later. But I recognized her, and I was like, oh yeah. But when they see each other and they have that moment of shared, like, I don't know, respect, I
Mm-hmm.
love the feeling of like, oh, that women don't have to be your competition
Yeah,
everywhere you go. And
exactly.
you know what I mean? I kind of felt that way with It Follows, where the girls in that are not against each other. They're like best friends. Gender Snaps is not like that because the girl on the soccer team is awful. And
Yeah.
that's typically what it is,
Yeah, it's a
right?
different
What you're
story.
saying.
Yeah.
Right. But I mean, it's refreshing to see that happen even like on a very minuscule level
Mm-hmm.
of just, oh, we don't have to, I don't know.
Yeah.
We don't have to fight just because we're both women.
And that's, I think, part of why I appreciated like Polly's character too, and like that whole thing. Like there is the girl with the
Ambrosia.
gams, Ambrosia. Yeah, and like they have their conflict, but it's kind of like, I don't know. I guess I appreciated the bit with like Adam's girlfriend as a contrast to that, where it's like she's not just out. I don't know. It's a little bit more nuanced, but I think it still goes to the point. And then yeah, Polly too, where it's just like she's an info and she has her own stuff, but she's not, again, like out to get her. And when things fall apart, she doesn't become like, she doesn't change her behavior necessarily. She's still just like, oh, okay, all right. Like she's
I
still just
know.
kind of trying to roll with it. So yeah, I appreciate the way that like the men and women are written in this in various levels.
Kaylyn, I am so happy we did this. I feel
Yeah.
like I loved this movie so much, and I felt very like I've got to do something about it. And then I thought, like you commented, and I was like, Kaylyn, we have to, like, it's meant to be. And I think that I will be just like you, where like it just improves upon rewatches. And I feel like this conversation has really deepened the themes and the way that I saw it anyway. So I appreciate you so much, and I love your voice on Letterboxd and in writing, and you're very inspiring to me too. I could see a lot of you in her, not the bad parts, but the good parts.
Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure being back with you. Ever since last time, I was hoping we'd be able to do it again. So I'm so glad, and to be able to share such a meaningful movie. I hope this spurs more people to watch it. It's so underseen, and it really shouldn't be. So whether it's summer horror or you save it for October, you should really hop on it.
And it's free on Amazon Prime right
There you
now.
go.
So,
No
so nobody has any
excuse.
excuse. Thank you, Kaylyn.
Thank you, Amy.
And we'll see you at the movies.